Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Breeze. Breezeway Productions The Breeze, where we bring you the latest in independent films and film festival news. And we continue our coverage of this year's Bentonville Film Festival with a film that we are happy to showcase called The Seven Faces of Jane. And we have director-writer here with us today, Boma, Iluma, and Julian Acosta. How are you guys?
Doing well. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Right on. Well, thanks for coming on the show. So I'll start first with the synopsis. Tell me a little bit about The Seven Faces of Jane. Whoever would like to go first.
Well, you want to take it?
Yeah, so essentially, the premise of this story is Jane, she drops her daughter Molly off at camp and encourages her to try new things during the week at camp. And in the week she drops her off and picks her up, she has 7 different adventures, and each adventure is directed by a different director.
Okay.
And Julian and I are both directors. There's Gia Coppola, Young Replicant, Ken Jeong. Forgive me if I'm forgetting anyone.
Xan Cassavettes and
Ryan Huffington.
Yeah, I thought that when I looked it up and I saw that you had a lot of directors and a lot of writers that were involved in it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 directors and more writers. How did this work in a pre-production sense when you had so many people on this in their respective categories?
Well, it was a bit of a game. There's this idea of Exquisite Corpse that we used while creating this film, and we each, as part of that, we each had our own segment, and the concept was, like Boma said, she drops her kid off, and then she goes on a self exploration of her own, just like her daughter, at camp, and we each were wrote and directed our own segments, and it was a bit of a game where we drew cards to choose our location, our story beat, and where we landed in the film. So, like in my case, I chose the 5th segment of the film. I lucked out and I got a wild card on the story beat. There are a few wild cards hanging around, so I didn't have that part, but then the location was a neighborhood in my case.
Okay. So each of them was a segment. Would I be right in saying that there was like the diner Twilight Zone segment, then the hitchhiker segment mixed with the vendor in the middle of the desert segment, and the beach like falling in love segment, which was yours, Boma? Is that the card that you drew for this?
Yeah, no, the card the card I drew was an encounter with a stranger.
Okay.
And then that's for what the story beat was. And then as far as location, I picked the beach. And then I picked the card for the second story.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So when you had everybody writing these credits, how did you move the script around to everyone? Did you, like, after you decided what the story beat was going to be, did it like the script just kind of flow through everyone to become the feature? It's just an interesting process. You don't see this very often.
Right. We actually didn't know what the other directors were doing. So like the idea of the Exquisite Corpse, like if you folded a piece of paper, right, and you're going to all draw a person, and one person would draw a head, and then you pass it along, and another draws the body and the arms, and when you pull it out, you realize, oh, here's like a person, and it's unique in their own little piece. So we didn't know what everyone else was doing. The only people that knew were the producers, and they didn't tell us what they were. They didn't tell us what other people were doing. There was a little bit of information that we got that was like, where does your film end?
Mm-hmm.
And what condition is Jane in? And it was, and I think that's it. So it's like you know, it really, she's on a journey. So it kind of ends, they all sort of end the same, where she's leaving one place and arriving into your world.
That's fascinating. So when you came time to shoot your segments and then you were directing it, did you have complete control artistically with like your DP and the rest of the crew, and that same crew and DP shifted to with everybody else, and they kind of just like went with from director to director to director?
Yeah, we all created our little created our own visual language with Andy. I had, as soon as I pulled my cards, I reached out to Andy 3 days into the writing process, just so that he had an idea of what films I was watching and referencing, and where I planned to take the story, and even before the script was like complete and approved. So yeah, that happened, and then the crew was all on board. The production designers, the great costume designers that we had, like they were all like, you know, fully committed to our project, but then at the same time, or sorry, to our short, but at the same time they're working on everybody else's project. So I couldn't even imagine what it was like for them balancing all these narratives all at once.
Yeah, that's definitely a lot.
Yeah.
I've never seen this process, which is why I'm so curious about it. You have a lot of people that are included, especially with some very famous and well-known last names like Coppola and Cassavettes. And how did everybody get together to work on this collectively? Like, did everybody know each other beforehand? Was there an email sent out like, let's do this and get together? Is everybody friends? Like, how did this happen?
There was a TikTok video, and we'd all just reply. I'm just kidding.
Nowadays, I wouldn't put it past anybody for something like that to happen. So I don't even know.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone had a different way into it. I think what the general consensus is that we all, you know, Roman really spent time curating the directors that he wanted for this piece, because he was producing it, or he did produce it, and I think they chose directors who would all complement each other. And I was new to the family. I didn't know, or to this team, I didn't know any of them, anybody. But yeah, we all met on Zoom for the first time, and yeah, I think, you know, in the midst of it, we spoke a little bit, but no one really knew what was like, you know, going fully on. So.
Yeah, and then after the fact, because I remember we had a Zoom when we pulled all of our cards, and that was when we first met. It was cool to meet everybody. That we got to know each other a little bit.
Yeah.
But after the fact, we also, when we finally saw the film completed and put together, we had sort of a director's salon where we gave feedback to one another. Like even Boma and I jumped on the phone and talked about my film. And, you know, it was cool to be able to work in a creative space like that. You know, Roman Coppola, who was the producer and, you know, this was his brainchild, is such a creative creature. You know, he can't do anything in a sort of like typical way. You know, his brain is running a million miles an hour all the time. So it was cool to be able to get to know everybody through the process. You know, at first a little secretive, right? Because weren't telling each other what our segment's about, and then later on, really collaborating with one another.
Right on. Well, it's quite fascinating to learn about this, and I'm happy that you guys shed some light on it, because I haven't seen this practice before, and I know that you did just premiere at Bentonville. How was your experience at the festival this year? Either of you guys?
It was for me. It was cool. You know, I loved it. It was really exciting to watch our film with an audience. It's, you know, of course I'm thinking about my segment a lot and how it's going to react. You know, we make these things, you know, figuratively speaking, in our basements, right? Without a lot of feedback. And we did have our little salon there, but you know, it's a very different thing to watch it with an audience and hear them, you know, laugh at parts that you didn't really expect them to laugh at, or not laugh at parts that you did expect them to laugh at, or feel sort of emotion and connection. I remember during our Q&A section talking about my segment and seeing the look on people's faces that were very connected, and they felt like they extracted some meaning, or they related to it in some regard. You know, so my segment was Rose, right? And you know, the girl that runs away from her quinceañera and sort of finds herself and comes to a better understanding of what her identity is and how she could be more herself, or her authentic self. Talking about that and looking out into the audience and seeing people communicate. As that's being communicated, seeing people, you know, react and you know, even just nodding, even if it's just a nod or moving to the edge of their chair or whatever it is, that's a really special feeling. You know, you feel heard. So I was very grateful to be able to screen it there and be part of a festival that's very much about inclusion, right? It's exciting for somebody like me, a person of color, have a platform, a place that we can, you know, talk about who we are. I mean, it's very exciting. So I appreciated it.
Very good. Very good. Well, happy that you two were able to come and talk about the film. Do you know where people can go to find out more about it? Like a website, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, things like that?
You know, I think that there's some articles floating around. I hope that we screen it more before it goes out to distribution. And then, of course, like our own Instagrams, all of us, our own social media is probably a really great way to.
You can shout that out. If you, like, where can people go to find you guys?
Yeah, I mean, for me, Instagram is probably the place where I like to post stuff about the film and my own work. Julian J. Acosta is my handle, but you know, that's a great place to sort of learn about the film and the directors, because we'll be dropping little bits of you know, info on where it's screening and like interviews and things of that sort.
Okay. And you, Boma?
Yeah, similarly, yeah, we're doing a whole bunch of press on it. You know, all the directors are trying to, like, you know, get people, build some hype around it. So you can find articles, podcasts with not only Julian and myself, but the other directors speaking on it. And yeah, I'm also on Instagram at Boma Iluma. That's BOMAILUMA. Yeah, reach out. Like you'll definitely see some stuff coming in the next couple weeks, months, especially as we find distribution and a home for the film.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. We hope that this will be one of the podcasts where you find out a little bit more about it. So we hope our audience is able to check out The Seven Faces of Jane, which just screened at the Bentonville Film Festival. And I want to thank both of you, Boma, Iluma, and Julian Acosta, for joining me today to talk about your film.
Thank you so much.